Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. So I'm sure most of you have seen this story circulating through the media for the past week about this one new study that supposedly comes out and debunks all the hundreds of other studies showing the scientific evidence connecting meat consumption with heart disease and cancer. If this sounds a little shocking, you're not the only one. World over, public health officials and scientists were shocked by this one study's conclusion, which tries to overturn decades of science. Hundreds of studies showing quite the opposite, the strong linkage between consuming meat, particularly red and processed meat, and risk of heart disease and cancer. So whenever I hear about a study such as this new one, I'm always extremely suspicious that it was funded by the meat and or dairy industries. How else can you get such a contradictory conclusion? When you have studies that are not funded by them, they show that consuming meat is not particularly good for you. But when it's funded by the meat and dairy industries, wow, how shocking. They get a conclusion that's completely different from the non-industry funded studies. So the first thing I went to is look at the sources of funding, conflicts of interest, all the disclosures in this study. And I was quite shocked that there appeared to be absolutely no funding from the meat and dairy industry.
Based on the research, we cannot say with any certainty that eating red or processed meat causes cancer, diabetes, or heart disease.
So the lead researcher for the study, Dr. Johnston, indicated on his disclosure form that he did not have any conflicts of interest to report during the past 3 years. So he was telling the truth in that sense. However, as recently as December of 2016, and do some math, that's definitely within the past 3 years, he was a senior author of a similar study that tried to discredit the international health guidelines advising people to eat less sugar. And it turns out that this study was funded by International Life Sciences Institute, or ILSI, an industry, a food industry trade group largely supported by agribusiness, food, and pharmaceutical companies whose members have included, say, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and Cargill, one of the largest beef processors in North America. And I want to add about the ILSI that the World Health Organization and others have complained for decades that this organization has long been trying to undermine public health recommendations in order to advance the interests of its corporate members, which remember, like Coke and Pepsi and largest beef processor in North America and pharmaceutical companies. That's who's been funding Dr. Johnston's studies. So Dr. Johnston defended his not mentioning this on the disclosure form. He said the money he received from this group was paid to him in 2015, even though a study came out in December of 2016. So he says that money was 2015, so it was outside the 3-year period for disclosing competing interests. So he thought he had it totally covered and he was being completely above board. However, others are not so convinced. Professor Marian Nestle, she's a professor of nutrition and food studies, and she says that, journals require disclosure. And she says it's always better to disclose fully, disclose more than what you're just required, because it's better to disclose fully if for no other reason than to stay out of trouble when the undisclosed information, the undisclosed conflicts are later exposed, as they are now in Dr. Johnston's case. And I want to point out too, this is not the first time that Dr. Johnston has been less than truthful about the influence that the ILSI has had on his research. Remember that sugar study that I just mentioned from 2016? He initially said in the disclosure that this group had no direct role in conducting the research other than providing funding. Sounds fair enough. However, he later had to amend the disclosure for that study after the Associated Press obtained emails showing that the ILSI had, quoted, reviewed and approved the study's protocol. So as we see here, Dr. Johnston has a history of intentionally doing this, of not fully disclosing the true power of the relationship that the ILSI has on his research. So I have no other conclusion to say that Dr. Johnston is a paid shill from the meat industry. And Dr. Garth Davis said the same thing today on his Facebook page here. And in this post, Dr. Davis details how the study's design was such that it would produce the exact conclusion that the meat industry wanted. It was a bizarre study design for this type of research and would produce other absurd conclusions, like there's not enough scientific evidence to show that people would be benefited from not smoking or from wearing seatbelts. And Mike the Vegan as well made a very in-depth, detailed video about this study's design flaws. And I'll link to Mike's video, and I want you guys to watch that, so that way I don't have to make the same video, and I probably couldn't do it half as well as Mike did. So I'll link to Mike's video in the show notes, and I'll also link to Dr. Garth's Facebook post. So please read that. There's a lot of good information in that. So that's it for this video, guys. Leave your questions and comments down below. I want to know how you reacted when you first saw these headlines in the media. Yeah, eating processed and red meat is good for you, like throwing out all the decades of science, World Health Organization recommendations, and now you know why. It was funded by a group that's been long protested by the World Health Organization for furthering its own corporate interests rather than the interests of public health. So anyway, let me know what you think down below. Like this video, share it. Remember, guys, it's time to act. Let's vote vegan. Yes, I'm running for City Council in Long Beach, District 2, on the Humane Party platform. If you live in Long Beach, you can vote for me next year in March. And if you live anywhere in the United States, you can contribute to my campaign. Please, everyone, go check out my website, ryanlum.net.